Chinese real estate developer Evergrande Group announced its entry into the electric car business last year with a high-profile launch of the Hengchi electric car, which Chairman Xu Jia claims will surpass Tesla as the world's #1 electric car brand by 2025. Although not a single car has been sold so far, the company's ability to raise money has been amusing, with its market value soaring to $87 billion in April this year, surpassing most car makers like Ford Motor. However, recent footage from Chinese citizens show that Evergrande's factory in Guangzhou is not operating at all. What's on the production line was NEVS 93, an old model designed by Sweden manufacturer Saab, but not the new model released by Hengchi. The footage also shows that the plant, which covers an area of more than 110,000 square meters, is mostly silent, with only 1 or 2 rooms where employees are meeting, and the production line is completely still. In April this year, Evergrande participated in the Shanghai Auto Show for the first time, and showed off the first 9 models of its electric cars designed by internationally famous designers, such as former BMW designer Anders Warming. But it was soon exposed by media that these 9 cars are model cars, with only a shell and no brakes or suspension system. It is also why Evergrande sent teams of security personnel to guard the stage to prevent the audience from taking pictures of the chassis of the display car. "
什么样的恒大造车路，买买买，合合合，圈圈圈，大大大，好好好。"
Evergrande claims to have invested billions of dollars to develop 14 mass production models and put them into production in the second half of this year. But it's currently June and there is no update on any mass production. In August last year, Evergrande said that 2 factories started trial production, but changed this story in March this year, saying that trial production would start this year and mass production would begin next year. The Chinese media Caixin recently asked Evergrande about this, and they replied that the old NEVS models on the production line were for testing the line equipment and training staff. But the media interviewed a number of automotive engineers who said that using old vehicles to test the production line did not make much sense and was not in line with industry practice. However, many local governments in China still believe Evergrande is their cash cow and are putting up funds to cooperate with Evergrande. According to the documents released by Chinese local governments, the electric vehicle plants that Evergrande promised to invest in, one for $2.7 billion US in Nantong, Jiangsu province, and another at $18.6 billion US in Shenyang, northeast China in 2019, but have still not been completed. Many Chinese netizens have also questioned Evergrande's fundamental purpose for entering the electric vehicle industry, which is simply to raise capital. These doubts are justified, as Evergrande is already in an enormous financial crisis. On June 15th, Chinese media Caixin was the first to report that Evergrande's capital chain was on the verge of breaking. It was reported that China's Liaoning provincial government was discussing with Evergrande to take a stake in Shengjing Bank, to rescue Evergrande from its financial crisis through state-owned equity investment. And once the news broke, Evergrande's stock price and US dollar bonds fell to a near 14-month low. Despite Evergrande's repeated denials of financial problems, the Chinese public has found that many of Evergrande's property projects have come to a halt and are being sold off at a 30% discount in some cities.
不是，它这个盖了很久了，按照深圳的速度，它不应该还这样哦。没钱呐，这肯定是烂尾了呀。烂尾了。因为你看这个楼，我是很熟悉的，几年前我是住在这附近的。这楼盖了很久了。这都很久，它都还外墙都没有完工。我现在住的地方隔壁啊，比它后动工的，人家都已经好了。
According to reports, Evergrande's debt reached 874.3 billion yuan by 2020. Which is comparable to the size of Iraq's total debt, and far exceeds the 3 red lines of debt set by Beijing. Namely, the asset-liability ratio after excluding pre-receipts should not be greater than 70%. The net debt ratio should not be greater than 100%, and the cash-to-short-term debt ratio should not be less than 1. That means Evergrande cannot solve its debt problem through borrowing anymore. Moreover, taking into account the USD bonds issued by Evergrande in Hong Kong, London, and New York, Evergrande's current debt is estimated to be $280 billion USD, making it the most indebted property company in the world. Evergrande has been using various means to maintain its capital chain. It is the majority shareholder of Hengchi Bank with a 36.4% stake, and Hengchi Bank is also the bank unit and bondholder of Evergrande. That is also the reason why Evergrande often uses commercial paper instead of cash when making transactions. Commercial paper is a widely used instrument, not only as a payment tool but also as an important financing tool in China. Commercial paper allows Evergrande to occupy the capital of upstream suppliers, which is equivalent to getting an interest-free loan. However, news about Evergrande's commercial paper going default is all over the internet in China. In May this year, media reported that regulation was looking into the capital flows between Hengchi Bank and Evergrande. It was reported that Hengchi Bank had transferred more than 130 to 150 billion yuan of capital to Evergrande Group through direct or indirect channels, including holding a large number of Evergrande's bonds to maintain Evergrande's capital chain. Some media quoted Chinese regulators have now asked banks to conduct a new round of stress tests on Evergrande's debts. In fact, Evergrande was already on the verge of bankruptcy in September last year, but it finally reached an agreement with most of its strategic investors who owned 130 billion USD worth of investment in Evergrande. The investors and debtors agreed to a debt-to-equity swap, which turned the debtor into shareholders, avoiding Evergrande's $100 billion debt going default. A picture of the debt-to-equity swap signing ceremony went viral on the Chinese internet at that time, which shows the shareholders of Evergrande and Hengchi Bank included many Chinese and Hong Kong tycoons. It was mocked by many netizens as having the most expensive and luxurious circle of friends. In the announcement made by Evergrande at the time, it said the strategic investors were willing to convert their investments into common shares and hold them for an extended period of time because of their long-term optimism in Evergrande. Xu Jia, founder and chairman of Evergrande, was ranked 10th on Hurun Global Rich List. He is also a member of the Standing Committee of the CCP's National Committee of the Chinese People's Political Consultative Conference, and is also the party secretary of the enterprise. A recent audio recording of Xu's internal meeting was exposed by Chinese netizens, in which he indirectly admitted to Evergrande's cash flow problems, but thought he could solve them. Xu's net worth has fallen by 1/3 to 19 billion USD since September last year. According to the Bloomberg Billionaires Index, Xu's assets have fallen by more than half from their peak position last year. The Evergrande crisis reminded people once again of H&A. H&A was once the embodiment of modern Chinese business, one of the first Chinese private sector leaders to receive political support for large-scale global acquisitions. It used loans to acquire stakes in globally known companies and seemed convinced that regulators in Beijing and around the world were afraid to put them under control. The myth that the company is too big to fail was shattered in February when H&A declared bankruptcy after failing to repay a $200 billion debt. According to Chinese media, the finances of 3 of H&A's subsidiaries disclosed that H&A shareholders and dozens of subsidiaries had diverted nearly $10 billion in corporate funds to pay off their own rising debts, making the review process even more difficult, and much of the money was unaccounted for. H&A's restructuring was eventually conducted in secret with the intervention of Beijing, which put officials on the company's board of directors. H&A chairman and co-founder Chen Feng was removed from H&A's main decision-making body, the H&A Communist Party Committee. In addition to H&A, Beijing took over the $290 billion Anbang Insurance Group, while sentencing its founder Wu Xiaohui to 18 years in prison for fraud. Beijing is also investigating Fosun International and Dalian Wanda, among others. What do all these companies have in common? They were established by figures with communist backgrounds and have acquired substantial overseas assets and debts. It is worth noting that Beijing's official media has repeatedly released public opinion about the investigation of Xu Jia and the possible crackdown on Evergrande. So will Xu also face the same fate?